Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Matt Garvey and we are here to talk about making comics today. And it's Thursday, which means it's time for another indie comic critique. This week we have been sent STARBURN issue 1 by its creator Coleton Mastick. Coleton, thank you so much for sending this over, sir. I really did enjoy it. You've asked me to put my editorial hat on and run some fresh eyes over your book just to see if there's any areas where I think you might be able to improve as a creator. As always, if you want to pick up Coleton's book, there'll be a link in the description, so make sure you go and support his work. We're going to start with the cover as always, and we're going to work inside and look at the art, the letters, that kind of thing, and then we're going to circle back to the story. I'm going to try and spoil as little as possible, but if there are spoilers, I'll give you a warning. And as always, there's going to be chapter marks in the description, so you can skip those bits if you don't want the story spoiled for yourself. But let's not stand on ceremony. Let's crack on, shall we? Okay, Coleton, I am liking the cover here, sir. I think it's a very dynamic cover. I'm a sucker for a detective story, so you get extra brownie points there. A couple of pointers I would say is, we're going to stick a black layer on this like we always do, just see if, the foreground, midground, and the background are separated, as they should be. So let's do that first. And one of the best I've seen so far, sir. Your logo is nice and bright. It sits off the background really, really well. Got a nice dark background, with the buildings, and you've got lighter, smoke, coming through. Then you've got your protagonist. Everything is separated really, really nicely. One thing I would probably do on your cover, and again, I'm making this look ugly on your art, so apologies for this. I would probably punch up the saturation on your character just a bit, just so he pops off a little bit more. But apart from that, I think what you've done, I'm liking the cover. A couple of other pointers I would probably point out. Your corner box. It's a bizarre choice, gonna say. I know that image is a big image from inside the comic, but I don't think you need it. Or if you're gonna do a corner box, I'd probably go for something, maybe of a picture of like the character's head, something like that. But totally your choice. You do what you need to do. Also, you've got a quotation marks of an iron heart still bleeds. If it's got quotation marks, who's the quote from? You don't need the quotation marks. If you're going to have a log line on the front of your cover, do you know what? Just put it in big, bold words just along the bottom, just make it stand out a little bit more. Also, liking that you're using a QR code on the cover as well. You don't see that often, so I think that, is a nice little factor. If someone sees it, they can scan it and it goes to your website, I'm assuming. So, but overall as a cover, I think it works really well. But again, as I said, I would probably just punch up the saturation just a little bit on the main character, because that's what the tweaks that I've done. That's yours. It just adds a little bit of oomph to it, I think. But, I think it's a good cover. Okay, so jumping into the actual comic itself, really liking your art style. I think it works really, really well with a sci-fi and a detective story. I'm liking your protagonist. I'm liking that he's a robot. He's got a beard and a moustache. I think that works really, really well. But just like with the front cover, what we're going to do is we're going to throw a black layer on it to see if you've continued to separate your planes, from the foreground, midground, and background. And let's have a look. Coleton, you've done such a wonderful job on the cover, and you've kind of let it slip through the interior art. Yes, you've got these nice bright signs here, being projected, but that's not where, as a reader, our eye is meant to be drawn. Our eyes are meant to be drawn to your protagonist and to the crime scene that he's investigating. So if it was me, I would probably go back and tweak those colors just a touch, just so, we know where we want our eyes to land. So that's the tweaks that I would make, and I'll take the black layer off so you can see it. I haven't tweaked it too much, but, that's what I've done. That's your original. We just need a bit more focus. And this is something that I've noticed through the comic as well. This page, for example, if I throw another black layer on it, everything kind of blurs into one another. It's all the same contrast, the same tones. And things just need a little bit of highlighting, just to push them out. Your protagonist, a couple of buildings, just to give us our eyes somewhere to focus. Otherwise, it kind of gets lost on the page. So that's the tweaks that I've done. That's your original. Tweaks, originals. Not major factors, you can easily go back and do this by just putting, like a hue saturation layer on it in a mask and just, pumping it up a little bit, have a little play around, and then just, again, throw a black layer on it and just so you can see it. And again, that's your original. That's with the tiny tweaks. It just, makes the page more interesting to look and really highlights your really cool art, which I really, really like. So, but yeah, I would say, you need to work on the colors a little bit. I wanted to show this page because there's a couple of things that I would tweak. Again, it's just my opinion. Feel free to, do whatever you want to do. This is your comic. This panel, for example, you've got your main character talking to his boss there, and then you've got the victim's corpse there in the foreground as well. Even though the victim is a very important part of this actual panel, it's not the most important thing that's going on in this panel. It's actually the conversation between your two main characters. So what I would probably do is I would probably use some colors to look past him so we can focus on your two main characters there. So what I would do is, I would just throw like a bluish layer over it, just so our eyes know to look past him, but we can still see him there. And I've also lightened up, the main characters. One thing that I would really like to see more of in your comic is, you've got this wonderful sci-fi, futuristic world, and you've got these beautiful pinks and purple lights, everywhere, bouncing off, buildings, that kind of thing, from neon signs. But nothing's really being reflected onto your characters. So what I mean by this, again, this is going to look incredibly crude, but there's a big purple light, over your main guy's right shoulder. I had to reverse it for a second, So something like this, just to really make them part of the environment more. I think that would really heighten the colors in this comic. And also on the last panel of this page, you've got your robot vision, which I like. I think it's very, very cool like that. You've drawn this circle of where you want the reader to focus, which is good. It's drawing attention. But if I throw a black layer on, it is all kind of saying the contrast again. So what I would do is probably punch up the saturation and the lightness, just so it breaks it away from, where we're looking, the clues, and I'll just take the black layer off so you can see that's the tweak that I've done, and that's your original there. So just these little minor tweaks with regards to the colors, I think, would really elevate the book a lot. But, I like the palette you've chosen. I think it's wonderful. I just think, just more foreground, midground, and background. Okay, so let's talk about your lettering. I think you've done a wonderful job with the lettering. I couldn't find any glaring mistakes. In fact, you've done a wonderful job with the entire book. You've written, drawn, coloured, and lettered it all yourself. So, fantastic. Well done, sir. What I would say is, even though I couldn't see any glaring mistakes with regards to the lettering, there are room for improvement. You've done all the, the basics that you need. You've crossbarred the eyes that need them and not crossbarred the ones that shouldn't. One thing I would say is, don't be afraid to, put a word at the top of the balloon and at the bottom of the balloon on its own, just so we're trying to get that nice diamond shape, just so the balloons fit around the text a little bit sweeter, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to the eye. So what I mean by this is, this is your original. I would slightly tweak that myself. This is just me personally, but I would change it to something like this, and it just fits in the bubble a little bit better, just so we've got that nice diamond shape forming. So that's what I've tweaked. That's what you've done. Again, just don't be afraid to put, a single word at the top and a single word at the bottom. It really does help with the bubble shape. But overall, I think the lettering is absolutely superb. And again, big thumbs up from me. Okay, Coleton, so let's talk about your story. Now, as I said before, I really did enjoy your comic. Again, big sucker for a detective story. I love it. You had me at crime scene. I'll read these kinds of comics all day long. And what I would say is, and even though I did enjoy your book, you do have a few issues, comic pun intended, with regards to structure. Now, that's something that I'm going to break down for yourself in a second. So this is probably where we're going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory. I'm going to try and spoil as little as possible. But if you don't want this comic, anything spoiled for yourself, click the chapter marks in the description as well. But what I did is I broke down the scene sections as I do for all the comics that are submitted to myself. And what I found is your first scene is 7 pages long. Not the longest start to a comic I've ever read, but is a little bit too long, because you've gone from a 7-page scene to a 2-page, then to a 9-page scene, then a 2 and a 2. The flow of the comic is really affected by those long scenes, and quick, long, and then quick, quick. It kind of disturbs the rhythm, if you get my drift. Now, what I would say is, you do tend to repeat yourself. Just like me doing these videos, I repeat myself constantly in the same videos, and I apologize for that. But, in your first scene, you've got your main protagonist talking to his boss, with regards to, the council taking over, the province, if they don't find the perpetrator of the murder. You kind of repeat that 2 or 3 times, and I think you could really cut that scene down by at least 2 or 3 pages, if I'm honest, and you could use that to pump up, add into some of those other scenes that may need a little bit more attention. And what I mean by this is, you've got your nice 9-page scene, which again, nothing wrong with that. No, don't have a problem with, characters talking, because if it's pushing the story forward, don't have a problem. But following that, and again, spoilers, your main character gets hacked. But you've not alluded to that, and you've not shown us anything that, would make that happen before. And this goes back to the Chekhov gun kind of theory that we've spoken about on this channel before. So what I would probably do is, if I can trim a little bit out of that first scene, is maybe halfway through that 9-page scene is, cut to, the den where, they're all plugged into their virtual reality, and have a shadowy figure come in and put, the thing on the back of your character's head and the note in his pocket, because you give no pointers that that's going to happen. So when it happens, it's kind of like, why did that happen? And that's not what should be happening. So I would probably, just go back and forth a little bit, play with the timeline and just maybe trim down those longer scenes and, pump up the shorter scenes because they deserve a bit more love. Now, I do have a video with regards to plotting that you might find useful. I'll put that in the description for yourself. But again, overall, I thought it was a really, really good story. And I think you deserve so much credit for, doing everything in this comic. One other thing that I did forget to mention at the beginning of the video, one thing you need to do is, dude, you need to do a credits page on the inside of your cover. It's just a blank page. Stick your website in there, stick your Twitter handle, your Instagram, anything. Don't have it blank, it's prime real estate. So, utilize every single page that you've got of your comic, okay? But overall, thought it was a very good comic. I really did enjoy it. Would like to read more. So, thank you very much for sending this. And hopefully you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you found that helpful. I will see you in the next video. And remember, if I can make comics, anyone can. Take care.